2014 Sochi Olympics have been interesting to say the least. According to Market Watch, on February 10th, hashtag Sochi Problems has taken over the internet, as people who are currently in Sochi, Russia post pictures and statuses about the situation there, complaining about the lack of infrastructure, incompleted creation of projects, and contaminated water. Now, even though this is only living in the realm of the internet, there is still concern about the impact that this could have on the image of President Putin, especially considering the Wall Street Journal explains on January 7th that Putin promised these Olympics would showcase a modern Russia. Even though the Olympic Games are supposed to take place outside of the realm of political and global politics, they can still have an impact on global politics as a whole, as the results of the Games can carry over even after the Games are completed. Because of this, it is important to examine whether these internet memes are having more of a significant impact than it may appear on the surface. And so, we must ask the question, beyond a certain level of embarrassment, do the Sochi Olympic infrastructure problems really matter for President Putin? And the answer to this question is actually yes, because they actually erode his base of power among members of the international community. And we can see why this is the case for 3 reasons. Initially, because the purpose of hosting the Games was to improve Putin's prestige. Second, because it makes Putin appear as a joke to members of the developed world. And finally, because it makes Putin appear weak to satellite nations. Initially, this issue with the Olympic Games has actually reduced Putin's prestige, even though the purpose of hosting the Games was actually to increase it. Now, right now, we have seen how Putin has put such an emphasis on these Games. According to the Wall Street Journal of January 7th, he ensured that security would be very strong in the Games, locking down the entirety of Sochi to ensure that nothing went wrong. However, security wasn't the problem, it was the infrastructure. Now, because of this, it has actually lessened his prestige among members of the international community, which is especially concerning, considering the economic issues that Russia has actually had. According to the Japan Times of February 1st, Russia has seen a decline in its economic growth. Now, the purpose of these Games was to help overcome this image that Russia is a declining country, which we've seen through its lack of economic growth and lack of infrastructure expansion. So the fact that Putin was not able to change this image directly negatively impacts his position of prestige. If he was able to show an Olympic Games that did showcase a modern Russia, it would show that he has brought his country forward. He's a prestigious and powerful leader, and one who was able to actually improve and grow his country. But because he wasn't able to do this, these memes have more of an impact than simply embarrassing him. It actually erodes his prestige among members of the international community. And we can see why this is the case, because these countries and the developed world now perceive Russia as a joke. Now, even before the Olympic Games carried out, many members of the international community did not take these Games as seriously as we've seen Games in the past. For example, the New York Daily News explains on February 7th that many world leaders, including President Obama, did not actually attend these Games. They decided to not attend them, many believe because of human rights issues, but also some believe because Russia is not seen as a very prestigious and powerful country in our global community. Essentially, they are seen as a backwards country, still living in the shadow of Soviet Russia. Now, because of this ideas about problems with their infrastructure have only worsened this image among members of the international community. According to the Wall Street Journal of February 7th, this has made Russia a joke. Everything from when the reporters first set foot in Sochi and saw the lack of construction to the opening ceremonies where one snowflake didn't actually turn into an Olympic rings. We saw that this entire Games has been made a joke of. People ridiculing it, not taking it seriously, and not considering it to be an actual impactful game. So what we can see is this has negatively impacted Putin's image among members of the developed world. They see him as not a powerful leader bringing his country forward, but simply a joke, someone who cannot escape Soviet Russia and is not able to actually bring his country into the modernized world, meaning he has less power and less influence among members of the international community because they don't consider him as much worth their time. But finally, we can see that this will actually weaken Putin's image among satellite countries. Now, ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, Putin has sought to try and bring about the countries who were once part of the Soviet Union back into Russia's sphere of influence. While not necessarily part of Russia officially, he wants to be able to have command and control over that. Unfortunately, Putin is actually losing this control and this issue with the Olympics will only weaken this further. For example, according to the Wall Street Journal of January 1st, there has been an issue with the nation of Ukraine, who has caught between Russia and the European Union, trying to decide which side that they will actually go with in order to enter into economic deals. Also, according to Reuters of February 7th, there is also the nation of Armenia, which Russia has also sought to court to try and bring into economic agreements to try and bring it under Russia's influence. However, because of these games, this negatively impacts Putin's image, because he's not perceived as a powerful leader of a country, but less of a joke, and someone who does not necessarily need to be taken seriously by these satellite countries. So we can see that because Putin was not able to change his image, and in fact degraded it further because of these Olympic Games, it is actually negatively impacting his influence among these satellite countries. So we can see that this issue with infrastructure is more than simply an embarrassment, because satellite countries that Russia wants to gain control over are actually moving further and further away, as Russia is seen as less and less powerful country, and Putin is seen as less and less powerful of a leader. So, when we return to the question, beyond the certain level of embarrassment, do the Sochi Olympic infrastructure problems really matter for President Putin? And we can see that the answer to this question is yes, because it actually degrades his power base among members of the international community. Initially, because the purpose of these games was to improve prestige, when it didn't. Second, because it made him a joke among members of the developed world. And third, because it made Putin appear weak to satellite countries. The intentions of the Olympic Games was to try and bring Russia forward into the modern world. Unfortunately, it failed to do that. Instead of being able to improve the nation of Russia and help improve its image among members of the international community, it continued to decline. Instead of being brought into the modern world, it was instead brought into the world of the internet, where it was ridiculed and made jokes of, and continued to be pushed as something that is still backwards.
Hi, first off, congratulations on finals.
Thank you. You too?
So you talked a lot about in the first point about how the weak economy of Russia has been highlighted through the games and that Putin should have done something differently. A lot of economists agree that presidents don't really have direct control over the economy, so do you think he actually could have done something differently leading up to the games?
Well, considering the games cost $51 billion to put on, and at a time when economic recovery is vital, it could have been a significant improvement. And even though presidents don't actually control everything that happens in the economy, they do control policies that influence the economy. So perhaps instead of focusing on the Olympic Games to bring Russia forward, Putin could have focused on improving the economy to help make it grow and make Russia a more powerful country.
Okay. And then the second point, you talked a lot about how Russia is seen as not powerful and that Obama's not going was partly because it's sending a message that Russia is kind of seen as a joke. But don't you think Obama's not going was a little bit more powerful than that, given their anti-gay policies and more of the deep-rooted issues that the U.S. and Russia has had for some time now?
As I did state in my speech, one of the major motivations was human rights issue, at least according to speculation. President Obama never officially stated. All he officially stated was that he was a little busy, so he didn't want to go. But others have speculated that this could be a sign of Russia's decline because if a country was very powerful, then they might be more likely to attend. For example, the president attended the Chinese games, even though they have human rights abuses, but the Russian games were not attended by the president, which is very significant.
Okay. And then going off, you talked about when you talked about the Ukraine and Russia conflict, you mentioned how Russia's starting to lose control of Ukraine, and you kind of cited to the fact that these games have not been very well. But again, isn't the Ukraine-Russia conflict way deeper rooted than that? And don't you think their losing control isn't maybe a product of the games, but more a product of tensions between the two countries that have been going on for a year or more?
The reason that Ukraine is starting to move away from Russia is they are seeing Russia as less and less of a threat. In the past, Russia has been very aggressive towards Ukraine, and so Ukraine has lived in fear of Russia. But because they're seeing Russia as less and less of a threat, they're moving more towards the European Union. Now, this fact that Russia wasn't even able to pull off an Olympic Games without a hitch makes Russia look even less powerful and less prestigious and even less of a threat, and one that it'll be easier for Ukraine to then go and work with other countries such as the European Union.
Okay, and finally, what do you think Putin can do post-Olympics to improve Russia's image?
Well, the issue was specifically in my question targeted towards the Olympics. But Putin could probably, instead of trying to focus on increasing his prestige among members of the international community, work on fixing his own country.
Thank you.